Joey, the Big Ten has 18 teams next year. Oregon and Washington heading to the Big Ten. What was your reaction?
Less surprised than UCLA and USC because it felt like that was going. Like it felt like the Pac-12 was really, really wobbling before those two left, and USC and UCLA was like, oh my God, what? But still kind of surprised because it's happening so quickly. There's a lot of financials that have still got to be worked out with those two programs coming into the Big Ten. And then I just kind of weird. Is that okay? Like I'm kind of weird about it because the Pac-12 is not on very stable footing.
To say the least.
To say the least. It's weird, man. It's weird. Everything that we thought about the next two schedules after the 23 season football-wise, they're gone. You still have to figure out how this is going to work for basketball. I mean, you're talking basketball, every other sport. You're talking so many more trips west.
Can you imagine being that guy or group of people or that gal in that office? You spent a year and a half figuring out this great schedule. And not Illinois, but the Big Ten have put together this great flex schedule that
we don't even know if that still exists. Like the protected rivalry thing, we have no earthly idea if that's still a thing.
No idea if that's still going to be a thing. But can you imagine? Yeah, we need you to like probably going off on a great vacation, a deserved month-long vacation. We need you to come back into the office, okay? Like, and it's like, what? We got to do this all over again. But yeah, because they're coming here in 2024. I thought it'd be like 26, but the Pac-12 obviously needs a media deal here soon, and might not even be a conference after this year. Listen, I understand why it's happening. I don't know if I don't like. I'm not sitting here going like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to college football. What we knew for college football. Listen, college football has been doing this for decades, but it's all happening. Like all these changes at once, Joey, the transfer portal, NIL, it's all so much to take in. But the Southwest Conference was a thing. It was a pretty big thing. The Big 12 has only been around for 30 years, something like that. Penn State moving into the conference, Rutgers and Maryland. So stuff has always happened. But to happen like it is, and for a conference like the Pac-12 to potentially dissolve, it's a lot. And then to think that a conference has 18 teams. I don't like it in the short term because I just don't know how it's going to look, how it's going to work. Like, how does this, are we doing divisions? Are we doing pods or all those things? But then I sit there and think, does it matter? Because ultimately we're in this messy middle ground, Joey, where we're getting to 20 or 24 team super conferences, right? And what does that look like? Is that fun? Because that could be fun. Like it could be fun if you looked like the NFL with divisions, like your team and my team competing in the NFC North for division championships. Only one of them seems to win them. But like that is fun that you play for the division, you get into the playoff, and then you have a conference that you kind of whittle into and you play the other conference. Like that could end up being fun if like Illinois is playing for the conference title is more the division title. I don't know what that division title is, but maybe it's with Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, Purdue, and Northwestern, right? And then you have another Eastern Conference, and you have a West Conference, whatever it is, West Division, I should say. And then you play the Big Ten has a playoff, and then the SEC has a playoff, and those two teams meet. Like that could end up being fun, but there's a lot of teams on the outside looking in of all of that. There's a lot of messiness that's going to be involved in whatever the next 10 years looks like. And for the meantime, it's just, I don't know if it's good for the sport. I don't know if it's good for, it could be good for football. I don't think it's going to be good for all these other sports. And it's messy right now. And I don't know where we're going. And I even asked Brett Bielema that question, where are we going with all this? And he doesn't know. So I'd love to ask Josh Whitman that. I'd love to ask Robert Jones, the president of Illinois, or the chancellor of Illinois, because he's the head of the chancellors and presidents council here. So it's just kind of like, where are we going? We're kind of in the middle. We're in the middle of all of this change.
Yeah, and in the process of that, you're losing a lot of like neighborly rivalries that mean a lot to a lot of people. Illinois and Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Illinois, Wisconsin don't play annually now, as it stands now. Dude, who knows what that's going to look like in December whenever this thing gets
Oregon
sorted.
as often as you play Iowa, that'll be weird.
It's very weird. So you're sacrificing that for money, which, I mean, I guess if you're going to sacrifice it for anything, may as well be money. And look, the other part I kind of wrestle with is new rivalries can still be born out of this, right? Like for Is it going to be with the same intensity that like Illinois basketball and Iowa basketball? Probably not. Like good games, equally matched teams produce rivalries.
There will be more good games. That is for sure.
Absolutely. And some rivalries will be born out of that, right? It'll take time, and it's going to happen tomorrow, and it's not going to be as fierce as the ones we've come to know. But they'll be born. But you're sacrificing like Oregon State, Washington State. That's not a thing, but they're going to play Penn State, Rutgers. It's just Illinois. Like that just feels weird to me. Like you kind of traded in like asking people who have invested decades and a good deal of money into these programs to say, well, it's going to be a little harder to see your team because half the time you're going to be so far away. It's not drivable. It's not accessible, at least within the realm of a lot of financial hope. And that's what kind of stinks a little bit, is to watch those things slowly go away.
Maybe the best way to do this is like, who are the winners and losers of this? The winners are the TV networks.
And everybody getting a check from them.
Or the streaming. Yeah. I mean, Brett Bielema came out and said, hey, I support this, whatever. I would if I were Brett Bielema. You're going to make more money because of this. Like the expansion, this new media deal, it's the reason he's getting $6 to $7 million a year, right? Like, so yeah, all these, I think the schools, the athletic departments, this is a win for them in the revenue side of things, the TV networks, that certainly is. And I think for football and basketball players, it's going to be a huge win. Like, because this is only going to help you in your case for more pay. Other winners of this, obviously the Big Ten and the SEC. The Big 12 has been a big winner in this, and being able to poach off these Pac-12 schools remains to be seen with the ACC. But anyone who's making money, I think, is the benefit. The losers of this, would you say the other student athletes? Like,
yeah, and the people spending money.
Explain that.
The fans spending money, like it's not going to be as accessible to go. If you're an Illinois fan, and let's say every other year you drove to Iowa, to Wisconsin, to Minnesota, that was your thing, right? Or if you're a Minnesota fan, Iowa's got 150 rivalries, it sounds like.
Yeah.
So if you're an Iowa fan, like you go to these, is it feasible for you to get in the car and go to UCLA, to USC, to Arizona, to Washington? And to be fair, it's probably not very feasible to go to Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, along those lines. Or imagine, we're talking like the Midwest that are kind of in the middle. What if you're a Penn State fan and 4 of your 12 games are on the other side of the country? Like it's just the people spending money are probably on the outside. Like, what is going on here? Which is, I do want to bring this up really quickly because I wonder what you think. This is just a lot of money. And like you hear the numbers and you're like, dang, that's a lot. We can't comprehend how much that is because we don't have that. And it's not coming into our pocket. I do think, and no athletic director is going to do this, no chancellor or president is going to do this. But if there was a little more clarity on where some of this money coming in from the TV network was earmarked to go to, like, would people feel better about that? Like, okay, well, my team is going to play on the other side of the country, but because of this deal, we're getting X, Y, or Z. Like, would that be easier to stomach if you're a fan? I don't know. I think so.
It goes straight back into your product, right? Like it's going into your facilities. It's going into your coaches, most importantly, probably. It's your personnel. It's going into your personnel. You get Brett Bielema and you pay him $6-7 million. And then in 2-5 years, he's going to get paid $10 million.
I mean, I understand that. And I'm not disagreeing with that. But like you had Brett Bielema before this Pac-12 stuff happened, right? So like
now he becomes even more valuable. Like
I get it. I just think it's harder to comprehend when you just like, it's like,
it's the same reason.
It's with everything.
Same reason Jaylen Brown's going to make $70 million because in the new NBA and how much money they make, you have to put that back into the product. And he makes 35% of the cap. So that's what's going to happen. So I don't know if it's like, oh, you're going to get this thing. It's just, you are going to be part of the club. And that's the losers of this. The biggest losers of all of this are Oregon State, Washington State, potentially Cal. We'll see what happens with Stanford here. But if I'm sitting there and I'm Wake Forest, or some of these other schools in the ACC that aren't known, Boston College, really, I mean, I know they got a little bit of history there, but if you're those schools in the ACC that the SEC is not going to want, you're going to be on the outside looking in. And I don't know if in 10 years, do these TV networks push the Big Ten or the SEC to consolidate further? Because What do they want? They want Ohio State, USC. They want Oregon against Michigan, right? Like that. Those are the matchups they want. Do they want Northwestern, Purdue? Right? Like, I mean, it's still a Big Ten game, but those aren't the games they're wanting. They're wanting these huge rivalries, and that's why Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC is going to make sense. And then you go steal Miami or Clemson; those are big brands that you want. Maybe North Carolina is involved in that. So I don't know what that looks like in 10 years of where those schools go. Like, does the Big 12 just decide to become the basketball conference and picks up some of those ACC teams that get left out, like Duke or something like that? I don't know. And you could have Duke North Carolina rivalry gone in basketball. So yeah, I mean, the losers are the traditional rivalries because that's what makes a lot of these things fun. But man, it's been going away for a while. The ACC and the Big East basically changing completely over the last 2 decades. That's been happening here for a while. Oklahoma State obviously is not going to happen. So yeah, man, like those are definitely some of the losers in this. I don't know where I'm at with the fans yet, because I do think in 10 years this could be a lot of fun for fans, but the way they've consumed college football or college basketball or whatever it is for the last 20, 30 years is definitely different. And for some people, I know it's probably not any good. It's not better.
Yeah, I mean, it's not better if you're an Oregon fan or a Washington fan or a Rutgers fan or a Penn State fan. Like, let's say you live in New Jersey, your team plays a 7 p.m. local tip on a Tuesday night at Oregon. That's 10 p.m. for you. Like, the way you consume the game has changed in the sense that you might not.
Yeah.
At least live. I'm in the same would go for the other way, where if you're in Oregon or Washington, you might be finishing up your last hour at work.
And you might not be good in your new conference.
Might not be good.
Think about Nebraska there for a moment, right? I mean, I don't know if Texas and Oklahoma are going to be nearly as good in their new conference. Like, that's the one thing if you're an Oregon State fan and you go to, like, listen, you're on the outside looking in, you're not going to make nearly as much money. But if you do end up, say, like in the Mountain West, you might be competing for conference titles, something that doesn't happen all that often in the Pac-12. So the games might be more fun, but you're not playing for the same stakes that you were previously, even if you weren't a very good program. And I know Oregon State's playing well recently.
Yeah, but your recruiting might change if you don't have a conference to sell to a kid on the recruiting trail. So it's just, yeah, man, like, I don't know that I love it. I understand the financial ramifications of it. I get it. I think there's a lot of domino effects that are just kind of like, well, that kind of sucks if that ultimately is a thing. If some of these rivalries truly fall away, or basketball, you can get into. Is 20-game Big Ten schedule still viable? Like, what? There's so many different domino questions. It's like, just when you started to get used to things, like it's probably it's potentially going to fall by the wayside. So it's weird, man. It's different.
You know who else is a loser in this? The NCAA, because I don't think the SEC and Big Ten are going to be part of the NCAA within 10, 12 years. We'll see if that's a hot take, but it feels like it's trending that way, Joey.
It does. Like, and it might feel more like it trends that way when this ACC, because the ACC is like the next domino out there, right? Like, there's all smaller dominoes, but the next big wave, I think, probably has to do with the ACC. When that is, we'll see. But that could probably, if you're the NCAA, you might be circling the date that you think that could happen. Like, oh boy.
You're basically looking at the Big Ten as the Western Conference and the SEC is the Eastern Conference. You know what I mean? Like, that's what it would. That's where I think we're heading. And where the Big 12 is in that, I don't know. Where, if there's a remaining ACC, I don't know. Like, maybe the Big 12 is just the basketball conference. I don't know what it's all going to look like. Or does Big 12 have a seat at the table? I don't know.
Big 12 rebounded pretty well,
given
where it stood a few years ago. Good for the Big 12 for kind of putting it together quickly, because it didn't look very promising for them.